So, hi, Dylan. You're in California, is that right?
Yes.
Nice. And yeah, I thought it'd just be nice to chat a bit about practice. Yeah, how would you describe yourself? A Dharma practitioner, or what do you want to say a bit about yourself to start?
For me, I think the biggest thing that has been part of my experience lately is, and by lately I mean the past maybe half a decade, has been this kind of, there's something deeper and I don't know what it is, but it needs to be revealed, I guess you could say. And by that I mean going through college, especially, I graduated in 2020, going through college with a sense of like, not quite right, you could say. And going through college, especially, I majored in psychology. And I remember one of the biggest reasons that drove me was like, I just had no idea, had no understanding of my own behavior. And I didn't know why I did things. I didn't understand. I had years of what you could call like really long-winded, excruciating analysis, like thinking about why I was doing things, but that wasn't getting me anywhere. And in fact, it was probably getting in the way of it. So because as I realized later, the thinking was getting in the way of the feeling, but the thinking, which I would say I had been taught to do in school and everything, to think at a high rate, was getting in the way of it. And so I tried to study psychology in college to figure out, okay, is this going to have me be able to understand myself? Is it going to have me be able to understand other people? And it really didn't. Maybe it was just because it was a bachelor's, but I didn't really learn anything. I left, honestly, with what I would call kind of empty-handed. Some of the upper level courses started to dip into interesting topics, but for the most part, and that's not even to mention the stuff I've learned since then, which I won't go into too heavily, but the replication crisis and kind of thinking about how so many of the psychology studies were being done with a very small, like homogenous portion of the world. The college educated, probably more male than not, white, like all these different things make up like the bulk of it. I left honestly thinking like most of it was rubbish, garbage. Like it wasn't really getting me anywhere. And after that, my first toe dip into what you might call Dharma was acid. I took some, yeah. That's the case for a lot of people. I took some senior year and had a really beautiful experience for a bit before the thinking kicked back online. And then I actually watched this show called Midnight Gospel. It was a Netflix show, 8-episode series. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Midnight Gospel is like I think an 8-episode series taken from like excerpts from, I think his name's Duncan Trussell, his podcast, and it's very psychedelic, you might say spiritual kind of show about a few different things. And episode 8 is focused on a conversation he had with his mother, who was at that time dying of cancer. She hadn't died quite yet. Now she's gone. And it was a really, really tender show. And I remember sitting alone watching it, and it released something massive in me. My mom had died in 2015, and this was 2020. And it released something that was just this explosion of grief. But then afterwards, I was surprised how energetic I felt. It felt like the energy was just kind of going through my whole body in a way that I'd never felt before. And after that, I got very interested in spirituality, trying to understand what had happened there.
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of reading. I had been meditating up to that point, like mostly 2020, the mind illuminated, following the mind illuminated. And after that, I kind of stalled because I was doing that thing I always did where I would read and think a lot, and not really embody. I had forgotten how even to be embodied. And the meditation I was doing was just very, I mean, honestly, if you're already not embodied, if dissociation is like a central factor of your experience, sitting still and counting your breaths is going to be pretty hard to change that for a lot of people. And it was for me. So it took me a long time after that to start to realize, I'm not really, people talk about presence and being present, and all these different things, but like, the question came up again, as it did in college, like, is this it?
Yeah.
And after that, lately, I've taken up like somatic experiencing and sort of somatic meditation, you might call it, and yoga too. Now, as I'm kind of slowly regaining the capacity to feel, like I'm starting to actually be able to understand myself in a way of the kind of the things you hear before, like my conditioning, my patterns, the call it the emotional palette of my childhood, or even adulthood after that. So I guess that's what comes up when I think about, like, call it the spiritual path. That's what comes up for me. It's the sense of, like, it was just this incoherent thing that I couldn't even understand at all. And slowly you pull bits and pieces out. And sometimes it might be nice, but most of the time it's not. It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Oh, it's more of this again.
Yeah. It's like, it's
surprise, surprise.
Yep.
More grief.
Over and over. Yeah. And as it goes on, like, I'm getting what I asked for, but the phrase "be careful what you wish for" comes up. But on the other hand, my way of being before, even now, I still think there's a lot more to unravel, if you call it that, or a lot more to see and accept, is maybe a kinder way to put it. And but even with that, bearing that in mind, I'm just really grateful that I started taking embodiment and like imaginal practice both more seriously, because it's a way to actually, like, to feel. And that's really what we're trying to do, I think, is like get beyond all the heady, like really thinky. I only say this just because I was so embroiled in it, like the thinky, heady, things need to make sense rationally, logically. There'll be this missing little key of explanation, and I fit it in and it finally makes sense. And that's not how it goes. It's more like, it's a lot more feely. It's a lot more feely than I think I was prepared for. But it's better that way too.
Yeah, super nice. Oh, that's a really nice description. Thanks. Lovely. And I thought one of the reasons it'd be nice to record this is because the way you talk about things, the way you word things, is just really nice. And I was really struck by when we do sessions, we often do like journeying together, and we end up in some quite deep territory in terms of sort of like non-duality, different aspects of non-duality, and yeah, like different embodied states kind of coming online, or things sort of like bubbling up, coming online, as well as like some quite deep symbolism, Jungian type stuff. And last time we spoke, we were talking about being really in the body and being like, yeah, you described it as almost like taking off a suit and then actually being present in it. And that was just super nice. So I don't know if there's more stuff you'd like to say about that, or
Yeah. For me, there was this sense of like going through life, being ahead, and there wasn't much going on underneath that, like in my body. I wasn't really a large component of my experience was probably anxiety, but other than that, the palette of emotions and energies just was not available to me. And through our journeying, especially, what I came to realize is you don't have to try to be a body, to have a body, but a lot of the ways, the methods that I was trying to like do to just be a body, like, was extra stuff. It wasn't necessary. And so what we were talking about last time was this, for me, it kind of just hit me like, why am I trying to have a body? Like, I keep trying to do something. And another thing that came up was a sense of like Jung calls it the persona, as one, I think, related thing to this, is the sense of putting something on, putting a suit on, putting um, maybe a mask would be another word, just putting on a person, and going about your day as that suit. And I was trying to, in these, especially like the kind of non-dual um, experiences, I was trying to do it through the suit, through the you might say, like, oh, through the thinker, through the logical, rational part. But that's all added on and all extra. It's not necessary. But if you try to go to do something, in this case, again, like this very embodied presence, if you do that through all these add-ons, it's the most natural thing in the world to just be a body. It's the most natural thing in the world. But the suit is unnatural, because with the suit, that's a lot of like civilization, or being a particular way in the world to go through your job, or go through even maybe your social circle if you're not perhaps comfortable enough with your friends, or go through, I think, for me, where I learned it a lot was probably school, of course. But it was a sense of like, it's almost this like embodied letting go, kind of the need to like be a particular way, or protect, have layers in between. And what was so interesting to me, especially the last time, was like, we talk a lot about like the belly and the chest. And for me, I could tell you the mental move I was trying to do was like, okay, go from head to chest to belly. But like, that makes no sense on reflection, and the mental moves that I was doing. I'm already all of it. The problem is the suit for me was located in the head. The suit was this, the rational, the thinky, the presentation I put on. I would put on the suit, and then I'd be there. But I was a belly already, and I am a chest. I don't need to go there. I'm already there. So even like when I think of body scan instructions, for me, often this extra stuff going on in my head was like, okay, like I would put in a mental image of my hand, and and I would see it so often, I would focus so much on that mental image. Actually, the sensations, I wasn't really feeling at all. And I think for me at least, suit mode was kind of a lot of that. But even that could be almost a dissociation, if you will, of like being so divorced from just the sensations of like the present moment, that you're using this method of body scanning, which I think almost is, you could call it a, well, I wanted to say rite of passage, but almost a realization, if you like, oh, I don't need to do that. The sensations are available already. And but it kept happening. There was this like growing, like, well, like it's not necessary. And then yeah, like the last time we talked, it was just this kind of, oh, like, yeah, I can kind of, the whole body is already available. There's no like accessing it in the sense of like, oh, you don't have it and now you do. No, you do. It's just already there. It might be inaccessible to the extra bits that you put on the suit, but like it's all already there, and it's just a matter of really like the kind of giving up, the letting go of the extra bits. And,
yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, that's super nice. And yeah, it's so interesting to me because it's like once you've got it, it's the most obvious thing in the world, isn't it? And yeah, and yet before that, it's like people or they can't even imagine it. It's like just beyond them. And it's like they think they know, but they don't. Because it's like, you're waiting for the thing where they're just like, oh, this really obvious thing.
Yes. Well, and that's what was so frustrating too. I think was a sense like, and to me, I mean, I could probably riff on like how our bodily sensation, like dissociation, how bad that must have gotten for it to be so hard to get, just in general. But like, yeah, it's already. It was the most. I think I laughed. It was the most obvious thing in the world. Like, oh, like, yeah, it's just already. You don't have to. The suit for me was the trier.
Yeah, right.
The oh, I have to. The trier almost implies a result that you don't have yet, but your body isn't a result. Like, it's just already there.
I think one thing to not undermine in yourself is that I guess yeah, we did quite a lot of like really deep journeying in terms of going into stuff, and then you did a lot of practice, like I had a lot of grief coming up, and like was doing a lot of yoga, and generally like also the kind of foundation in meditation, and like so it's almost like I think it's like the upgrades have to be there and be present and be ready. And did you also, I think I remember you mentioning a mushroom strip. Did you have a mushroom strip that was a bit about this?
Yeah, I remember that. It was the biggest thing I realized from that was like my body is just one unit. The sense of like I'm not in any particular place, in like I'm not in my head or even like in a particular part that I could point to be like, this is where I am, but also the sense of like being connected to the whole thing. It wasn't like that was also honestly pretty ordinary. It was a bit of a mushroom trip, yeah, but it was, I wasn't it didn't feel like this massive like, oh my goodness, this esoteric kind of thing. It was just like, oh yeah, like, it already is like this. It's just like the layers I put on over it that makes it seem otherwise.
Here we are, humans hanging out. Yeah, and I think that then it's like all these things that that you've done, then it's almost like I almost say like Tetris or something. It's like they all line up, and then it just It like takes the rows out, and then you can just drop into your body, and then you're just like in it.
And then it's like, oh yeah, oh, I like that. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And you're just, oh, I'm already here.
Yeah.
Here now. Oh yeah, I
am. And is there anything else you want to talk about with it that feels important, or does that feel like it covers it?
Yeah. For me, a lot of my ways of putting on the suit necessarily involve putting away a lot of other parts that are important. For me, a lot of my persona suit was oriented around like this, at different times, this even keel, or this just 24/7 like jester kind of like, especially in college, like just constantly being funny, goofy, like in this kind of like really need to do it kind of way. And I kind of swung back and forth between those two. But I remember, we talked about this, I remember reading a book in like senior year of college about, one of the excerpts in the book was something about how like, oh, people have, you know, multiple emotions a day or multiple emotions an hour. They feel things, you know. And I read that and I went, huh? Like people like feel emotions. And it made me realize a lot of the suits that I had put on had put all that away, had put all that to the side. And I think, I mean, you know, since again, the suit is like an unnatural part, it's something we put on in order to get that's something I put on in order to get through it. A lot of that had to do with needing to, at different points, to call it survive or get through it in the way I needed to. But you know, the consequence of that is it almost totally divorced me from my feeling life, besides like this constant like anxiety. And I guess what I'll say to that is you do that enough without processing what's there, and eventually you don't really feel much at all. That's what ended up happening, was this like sense of like we were talking before, like, oh, you know, you don't have to try to be a body. And like, even feeling what was going on in my body, there wasn't really a lot there. And I have a lot of sympathy for, I think, a lot of people around us, because I think that's more common than we realize.
Totally. Yeah.
Like just being so, or reading words of someone saying like, you know, if everyday things, trees, the sky, birds, like if that doesn't evoke something in you, some kind of feeling, it doesn't have to be anything in particular, but if it's boring, that means you're numb to your experience, you know. You don't, in some ways, you're not really, I remember telling a friend, you know, if you push out the bad stuff, eventually you'll push out the good stuff and you won't have anything at all after that. And I think that's a really common thing. And I also think, like, you know, meditation can be really easily, people say, you know, talk about the spiritual bypassing and stuff, and meditation can so easily be done in that kind of way without even realizing it, that you don't even realize, oh, like, you know, my whole body has sensations and is supposed to be feeling things. And if you're meditating with that kind of background, which a lot of ways I was, like, you know, not really feeling anything, all you might get is like a quiet mind, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
There's so much more. There's so much more available.
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting as well, because I can't remember what my experience was like when I started. There was certainly lots of trauma, dissociation from the body, all sorts of things like that. I wouldn't say that I was emotion. I certainly had a not very healthy relationship with my emotions, put it that way. But now, yeah, now I have the opposite problems, what you were describing. When you were describing it, where you said like people have multiple emotions a day, I was just realizing how much, like every second I have like 20 different emotions all at once. Yeah. And I'm just like, it's just sort of like really intense and really full on and very alive. And I cry most days, and just like very, very, very emotional. So I think I just thought that was an interesting reflection I had. But
that's where because honestly it's like, I've had these moments of I'll just like I'll just be grieving something and I'll look, and suddenly it's just so, I'll be looking at like a plant or a bush, and like the sunlight will be out, and I'll have just like grieve something really big, gone through a major, I think, release, and I'll look and I'll be like, oh man, that's just so beautiful, and it's not anything spectacular. It's not like a sunset in the mountains, and it's I don't know, a meteor shower, and not that that's bad, but it's not like I'm out there looking for like a super fireworks display of an experience. I think really like for me, like where I feel my dharma going, where it is recognizing the beauty and like the sacredness, just the like what the heck kind of wonder at like the stuff that's already there. You don't need to have nothing wrong with any of it, but you don't need to have a spectacular thing. You just, for me, it's like this feeling of clearing what I have read and what I agree with is the emotional backlog. And then your body's sensitivity. If you're numb, it's because you've got a lot there, and I think many people do a lot do. I know I do, still do. And as that sensitivity redevelops and you can process, and the other thing that I kind of realized was like I didn't even know what I was feeling. One thing that was kind of tricky for me almost was a realization like my emotions, my feelings, they're already happening. I'm not, I don't need to try and have an emotion. It's just as my sensitivity develops, I realize I'm already feeling things about different areas. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm fully clear on my relationship to these different areas. Maybe I have something that I don't, that I'm looking at wrong, and I'm feeling away because of that. But like, you start with where you are. And for me, it was like, even just recently, as they've started coming up, I'm like, oh, it's not so much like, it's not the suit that's feeling, it's just my body that's feeling it. And that exploration of like what's already there and what might not be natural, I could say, what's imposed, but is still there as a result of like maybe these knots of thinking the world has to be a certain way, or all these different things, like, but it's still there. And that's really the map. As they say, the body keeps a score.
Yeah.
And that was another realization. I don't need to try to have emotions. It's just as you can be more present with your experience, you're already having them. You're not, and that's almost like, for me, it's like, you need a measure of strength, I think, to go through it. But what this almost is doing in my mind is like increasing your receptiveness, your receptivity, which means, you're receiving, which means it's, coming to you, which means you're not generating it. Like, so I'm not, on some level, of course, again, with the knotted up perceptions, maybe I am, but at the same time, it's like that's already happening. You know, I don't need things.
Yeah, more
Dina,
and more receiving,
yes,
less and less
exactly.
perceiving. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, my last thing is like, as you kind of feel these things, I think this kind of presence is what is necessary, not the kind of oh, I'll meditate, and like we were talking about before, I'll just like numb, I'll meditate, I'll have a quiet mind, good. You know, like more like the okay, like I need to process my stuff, because on some level, like for me, it hit me, no one else is gonna. I I can't. I hope to maybe find, and you know, you're one of them, like find people that are doing it, you know, processing and like going through it. But like um this sort of thing, it's not like you have to do it alone, like in a cave, but you know, you're the one that is ultimately the catalyst for it. No one, you can read all the spiritual books and meditate all the hours, but it isn't about effort. In this, for me, like this isn't about effort. It's about just like, again, taking the suit off and just working with what's already there, wherever you
Yeah, right. Showing up for what's there. I really like that. Yeah, you're the one who's doing the work. Yeah. And we can help each other, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's nice. And then I wondered, one more question. How do you relate from this place of like receiving and being with what's already there in the body? How do you relate to the like symbolism and the Jungian stuff, or the imaginal, or anything in that realm? How does that feel?
I remember one session where I was talking about something in my gut, and I forget what phrase you exactly used, but you said like something along the lines of a vicious dark liquid, and imagine that kind of going through your whole body, and suddenly like that sense of just like embodiment was super there, super pervasive, and you know, Imaginal is, as far my experience is still pretty limited, but it's kind of like this metaphor way to get into the energies, metaphorical imaginative way to like unlock what's already there. And that's like, I think a large part of like Jung's stuff. Like he wasn't creating anything, he was just uncovering almost. And that's what Imaginal is for me. It's like uncovering the things that are already there to work with. And it's like that's really, I think, what I was looking for almost, is like, I talked at the very beginning about a key. You know, if I just find this very specific explanation, then the key will fit and the door will open, and untold riches or whatever, I don't know. But like the Imaginal uses the opposite of the rational. It's like you're kind of going, maybe at the beginning, like, I don't really know what to expect. And then suddenly like, it's very natural. And you start going through it, and it's like, you're speaking in metaphors and like images, and you're evoking all these different things, and stuff's happening, and you have no idea. You're like, what's going on? And suddenly like for me, like the understanding of the suit thing, even that's kind of Imaginal for me, because that's a metaphor in which I suddenly realized what my experience was.
Yeah.
But my experience was already like that. The metaphor didn't, in that case, it just showed me what was already there. And so that's what it really is. It's like, it's this just creative way to point at something already in your experience.
Yeah.
But the rational kind of like Western kind of like even patriarchal dominated mind of like control. Like this is a creative process, and that's the opposite of control. You know, you talk and you suddenly something's there and you're like, what is this? But it's a lot more like nature in that way. Actually, it's this organic flower. I would put it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's almost like the creative allows it to fully be itself.
Yes.
Because rather than trying to pin it down, you're sort of connecting with it. And
you're allowing it to be itself, which is like, that's taking off the suit as much as I've ever heard. Taking off the suit, allow yourself to be yourself too.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, nice. Cool. Oh, that seems like a good place to finish. Thank you. That was really, really nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Nice. Okay.